do my intro, but I am completely in shadow, so let's pack up this little wilderness camp and head back to the van, and I'll film it there, where it's a bit sunnier. The camera, obviously. Right, let's try this again. Welcome to our channel Mispronounced Adventures. My name's Alex and welcome to the Nordic Arctic. This isn't an episode from the main Arctic trip round 3, but if you're new here, do consider checking out Arctic trip round 3. New personal record, -38. Or Arctic trip 1 or 2. This is a collaboration working with Anker and the Anker SOLIX C1000, and this is arguably how I fund trips like this. This whole season has been funded by 2 Powerstation videos, the Anker SOLIX C1000 and the F2000, and a few months of YouTube ad revenue. But since the C1000 became my go-to power station for my everyday normal van life, I thought I'd do a long-term review on how I use it, even if it's less than conventional. So let's get on with it. So through YouTube I've been quite fortunate to be able to play and experiment and test quite a few different power stations, and in the past I've usually done a variety of silly things, from using one of them to power an electric outboard and dressing up as a pirate and getting drunk, Yarr! To a few e-bike, e-camping trips. I just think this is brilliant. And some long distance trips. Getting there though. But the C1000 quickly became my favourite, and it's the one I keep with me in the van when I go away on trips. So hopefully from this video we can go through and see why it became my favourite. My history of Anker goes further back than just the last year where I've been working with them on collaborations. Professionally I've been using them for about 10 years. I usually spend a good chunk of my year overseas leading expeditions worldwide to remote places, jungles, deserts, Himalaya, and for me, electrics working in those environments is important. Phones, cameras, satellite equipment I need to keep charged. So long term I've used their small power banks, to their cables, earphones, and even their miniature solar panels. So when Anker contacted me last year to work with them for one of their larger power stations, I jumped at the opportunity, and luckily I've been able to keep working with them. So it's not just a brand I'm working with because I do a collaboration, it's a brand I've been using for about a decade now. So I've previously said in videos that I see power stations for a trip like this as a key bit of backup equipment. Whilst it's not the primary electrical system in my van, it is an important bit of my backup equipment. So the Anker C1000. Why is it my go-to? One, it's the 1 kilowatt-hour range of power stations, or this one is 1056 watt-hours, which I think is the sweet spot for my use case of power stations. Larger ones, like the F2000, which is a great power station, it's just a bit large for my day-to-day use in the van and a bit cumbersome. And some of my smaller ones just don't have the capacity to do what I want. This one, on the other hand, is a great backup solution, doing odd jobs, and also it can be its own standalone solution if you want to go off a camp somewhere, or some of the e-bike trips I've done. 1 kilowatt range power station is sort of the sweet spot for me. And speaking of form factor, one, flat top, which means it is easily packable on cupboards if you want to, or just somewhere else on the floor when I'm driving, so it's not really in the way or too cumbersome. And at 12.9 kilos, it's not too heavy either. So the main reason I think this is my go-to power station is the capacity coupled with the sheer power and output of the inverter this unit's got. So the C1000's got an 1800 watt inverter in it, and with surge pads, it can do up to 2400 watt. Surge pad just sort of allows you to run some devices which are above the inverter's capacity without tripping it. It does it in a few different technical ways which you can find out about on their website. Where it actually comes in useful and why I like a big inverter is quite a few times on the Arctic trip I need to heat stuff. So as many people know, turning electricity into hot air is pretty inefficient. You're not going to heat your van off-grid with electric and electric heaters. You haven't got the capacity for that. More often than not on this trip, I find I need to heat individual components. So I quite often have to use a 2000 watt heat gun, which I've used to, when I was doing the lights in the engine bay, easier just to chuck that in the engine bay, do my heat shrink connectors. Well, power stations have their use. Need to do some of the heat shrinking for the electrics, and it's currently -20 in the Arctic. Or on a -37 overnight night, the Arctic diesel gelled up and I needed to use the heat gun first to try and heat up the engine preheater to get the diesel to turn back to liquid. And heat gun. When you're doing things like that, yes, you're turning electricity into heat, which is extremely inefficient, but you're not doing it for a long time. You're doing it for 10-15 minutes, and that's got plenty of capacity to do that. The other way I often use it quite a lot, as is seen in many of my technical videos, is I use it to run an AC to DC power supply, and I use it for testing equipment as on my test bench. On this trip, I've used it a few other ways. I've been able to charge the engine battery when it was flat a few times. As this is the second time on this trip I've flattened my battery, so I'm just going to add on my Anderson connector to those 2 points so I can then plug that in easily without having to faff around a lot. And on the day where the Arctic diesel froze, I used a power supply on this to run a diesel heater. Rigged up, pumping diesel. Hopefully this will heat up just the under area of the van a bit when it's running at full chap. Inside it's running off the Anker and the power station and my little diesel jerry can down there. So give it 5 minutes and come back and have a look. Until the diesel I had with me froze. Well, that's a bit inconvenient. So it's gelled up in the lines and stopped the heater from working. And since this power station has a larger inverter than my van does, sometimes if I need to do double cooking, I might have the van's inverter running the induction stove and this will be running the air fryer. Got the frying potato stuff I like, air fryer going, running off the power station. That's running off the van's inverter. Katie's asleep, and she's not feeling very well still. And yeah, another cold night to this park up. Hopefully some decent northern lights tonight. All those things are high discharge, but I'm not doing them for too long, so it doesn't impact the capacity that much. As for your more conventional everyday use, I make good use of the ports on the front. So it's got two USB-Cs, one being 100 watt, which is what I use normally when I'm running the laptop for editing. I like running the laptop directly off the power station, that if there is an issue with rendering, it doesn't waste energy in my main battery and it will just flatten that. And with my remote job, I do a lot of video consultations on Zoom, designing electrical systems, and so I use the iPad as well, which is what I often use for the other 30 watt. So that's a great way to fast charge the iPad. Additionally, it's one of the only devices I've found which can fast charge the DJI smart controllers. It's so difficult to charge these things quickly, and they're so picky. The Anker, I found, does work for it. And you've got two USB-A as well, which have IQ technology for a few of the other things in charge as well. And one of the other features I find, because in the Arctic it's quite cold, and even though it might be plus 21 degrees in here, the floor sometimes can be -5 or -10 on a really cold night. So if I'm editing, it's quite nice to have my feet up and use it as a footrest. Well, it was getting a bit cold outside. When I left, it was -15, and I was getting a bit cold. And since the next section is something you would do generally indoors, I thought I'd come indoors. So, charging, quite a few different ways to do it. A lot of people do know these as solar generators. And yes, they do have a MPPT controller built in. This particular unit, you can have up to 600 watt of solar coming in to charge it. But I'm up here in the Arctic, and whilst it is quite sunny today and I've spent most of my time squinting in the sun, it's quite a low sun, it's not particularly effective for solar charging. With that same XT60 connector, you can also plug in a 12 volt socket into your dashboard of your vehicle and charge it that way. But where these really come into their own is using AC to charge. So they use the inverter effectively working in reverse. Because of that, you can go on the app and you can select a bunch of different charge modes. Normal is up to 1000 watt, and then you also have ultra fast charging, which is 1300 watt, which you can charge this 1 kilowatt hour power station from 0 to 100% in 58 minutes, which is pretty ridiculous. How I actually use that is I've got the inverter in the van. I quite often plug the unit into my inverter in the van, which uses power from my leisure battery system. I'll do that when I'm driving, so the leisure battery system is being charged off the engine, and then that's going in there. Because it's so quick, by the time I've done any medium length journey, that's finished charging and the leisure battery's back up to 100% as well. So one of the features I haven't actually mentioned is the light. And whilst it might seem quite gimmicky, I've actually found it extremely useful up here for doing outside projects or just illumination. One of the things I didn't think I'd actually ever use on the Powerstation is probably one of my favourite features of it. And I have had it in some rather extreme circumstances. LiPo4 lithium chemistry shouldn't be charged below 0. So on really cold nights I take it off the floor, and on medium cold nights I leave it on the floor but just quite near the heat event, which just keeps the unit a bit warmer so it doesn't get below 0 degrees. And shouldn't be really discharged below -20. Overall for me, it's a very versatile power station. It's big enough capacity wise and inverter wise to run pretty much anything you want, but it's still physically small enough to be quite portable. So it's become my go-to. Hopefully that's given you an oversight why it works for me, and there's plenty more features I've not mentioned. The 12-volt car socket, whilst I don't use it, other people will. There's plenty of appliances which run off 12-volt car sockets, and whilst I use it to complement my larger electrical system in my van, it's a great standalone system, and it's expandable as well. So you can get an expansion battery and increase the capacity even more. But for me, it complements my current electrical system, and for my own smaller projects, it works great as a standalone system as well. And if you want to get your own Anker SOLIX C1000, there are currently some amazing deals on. Check out the links in the description, but you can get up to £250 off a C1000 and up to £519 off related series. But those offers are only available till the 31st of March, so check out the links in the description below. And well, that's towards the end of the video, and if you've made this far, thank you very much. I know everyone's favourite videos are not power station videos. The reality is this channel does a lot of things with technical projects, and I do use power stations. As I've said, and this whole series is, everything here is funded by you guys who watch these videos. Collaborations like this, whilst this trip is already paid, collaborations like this are going to be funding the next big adventure. And if you are new here, consider checking out, subscribing to the channel and finding some of the technical projects I do, or some of the adventures which collaborations like this finance. But thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.